Coming up in this episode of iCantCU, I'll talk about my trip to Washington, D.C., which included some one-on-one time with our newest senator from Pennsylvania. Stick with me.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the iCantCU podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of iCantCU, your window into a world where blindness doesn't dictate ability. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for this episode, and welcome inside Studio B. Not too much has changed. Before I talk about the travel, I just want to tell you why I was in Washington. It was an NFB event called Washington Seminar, and what that is, every year, end of January, early February, we head down to Washington and we do a day of meeting with the rest of the NFB folks. They have a thing called the Great Gathering In, where the president of the organization speaks to us about what's going on within the organization itself, as well as what our agenda is and what we want to convey to our political leaders. There's also usually a congressman or congresswoman or senator that stops by. This year it was Pete Sessions, and he got an award. He is a very, very good friend to the blind community. He's a Republican from Texas, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. And for Pennsylvanians, our group, there was around 13 or 14 of us. Our typical schedule is Tuesday we meet with our representatives, Wednesday we meet with our senators. And we don't always get to meet with all of our representatives. It's very unusual if we get to meet with more than one or two. This year, unfortunately, I didn't get to meet with any of our reps, but we did, as I mentioned in the intro, get to meet with our senator, our newest senator. And that's how it goes. And because there's a big group of us, we're broken out into smaller groups, and we each have 4 offices, 5 offices to stop by. And sometimes, like I said, we get to meet with our representatives. Sometimes we meet with somebody in their office. Sometimes it's as high up as their legislative director or chief of staff, and sometimes it's just junior staff. It doesn't really matter as long as we can convey our message to the folks so that they then pass it along to our representative. The group I was in consisted of, I actually was a floater, but I ended up sticking with this group, was led by Michelle McManus. She's from State College. And the other folks in the group, it was Simon and Kaylee and Brian. And Kaylee, Simon, and I are all constituents of Mary Gay Scanlon. We're in Pennsylvania 5. So that's why I went with that group, because we were going to her office. No, again, we didn't get to meet with her, but we did get to meet with Emily, and I don't remember what Emily's title is, but she's fairly high up in that office. I don't remember if she's, again, chief of staff, legislative director, whatever her title is. We got to meet with her. The big takeaway that I got from that meeting was Hobbs, the coffee shop in Swarthmore, takes a long time to do anything, even just a regular cup of coffee, which I didn't know. I don't usually go there, but I had mentioned to Emily that I occasionally see the congresswoman when I'm going into a Keystone meeting and I'm getting the donuts from Dunkin', and I come out and she's either walking past or walking further down the street. Liz always spots her. And I've talked to her on occasion about some things here and there about what was going on. It's just a very good way to get in front of these folks and show that, hey, we can do this on our own. We need your help to do certain things. And I'll get into the particulars about what we talked about in a second. But before I get into that, I wanted to mention the travel aspect of it. I was filling in for our president, NFBFPA President Lynn Heights, while she was traveling out west. So I had to get down there on Sunday this year, as opposed usually I go on Monday, and I get there just in time to go to the thing called the Great Gathering In. And again, I'll explain all that in a minute. But this year, because I was filling in, since I'm the first VP, I was evidently doing things that she usually does, one of which was a legislative meeting for presidents and the legislative directors. That was on Monday morning, and that's why I had to go down Sunday. I get to 30th Street Station after taking a regional rail from SEPTA into the station from Swarthmore. And I had plenty of time. So I'm basically doing laps and getting some steps in inside 30th Street Station. It was empty when I first got there, but as I was there for a while, more and more people. So it kind of became like an asteroid situation. And I'm dragging my suitcase behind me. I've got my backpack on. I'm sweeping with my cane, but it just got too busy to keep doing that. So after a while, I did stop. Now, I wasn't feeling 100%, as you heard in the last episode, and I am feeling a lot better now. So I wasn't, like I said, 100%. I didn't feel terrible, but I didn't feel great. I had gone over to the red cap and I said, I need to go. I'm on whatever the train was. I was on it. It was Acela. That's the faster train. Faster and a little more, I don't want to say luxurious, but it's a more comfortable ride. It's not you're not jostling all back and forth like you do on a normal train. It's smoother. The seats are more comfortable. It's just nicer and it's more expensive. But in this case, when I was going down, and I think the train left around 1:30ish and it was late, and I'll get into that in a minute. Because of that, it was only about $10 more than the regular train. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take it. It was a better time. And the other train happened to be late too. So I tell the red cap, I'm on this train. It's the 1:35 or 1:45, whatever it was, down to Washington. And he said, okay, come back at around 1:30, 1:20, and we'll go down. And I usually don't use the red cap when I'm traveling. But when I have a suitcase, I like to use the elevator because the suitcase is big and I don't want to carry that down the escalator because I don't want to fall down the escalator. So I come back over and the guy takes me down and we get on a train and he said, okay, well, where do you want to sit? And I said, well, I'm on the Acela. I have a seat. I thought it was 10C or whatever the seat number was. Oh, that's right. I almost got on the wrong train. I didn't almost do it. The red cap almost put me on it. So I thought, okay, it wouldn't have been too big of a deal other than if I had fallen asleep. That train continued past Washington where the Acela, that was the last stop. So, and I have been on a train where I fell asleep. It was a regional rail and I went a couple stops too far back when I was working at the Blind Bodega. And I believe I did talk about that in an episode then. So I get down to Washington. Now, again, my train was late and I am not frantic, but I had a Keystone chapter board meeting at 4:00. My train was originally supposed to get in at 3:15-ish. I don't think I got in until 3:30, 3:35. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to get a cab, get over to the hotel, check in? And I really was thirsty and get a Starbucks. My first goal was to get to the hotel. I figured I can do the call. I could find some quiet place in the lobby area. And the hotel, the Holiday Inn Capitol Hill, is very big. There's a lot of hallways and ballrooms and things like that I would be able to find a quiet or quieter spot. When I go to the taxi stand, and I kind of remembered where it was, so I made my way towards it. I wasn't 100% sure, but I saw a bunch of people in a line, or what seemed to be a line, and I asked the person who was in front of me, I said, hey, is this the taxi line? And he said, yes. So I waited, and they went, and then I'm standing there, and there is a girl who is telling him, okay, you can get in this one, okay, you can get in that one. Well, I'm the next one up, and I'm standing there, and the trunk doesn't pop open. So I'm assuming, I can't tell if there's somebody already in there because some people were coming and getting in further down. And by further down, I mean maybe 10 feet to my right. Some people were jumping in if they came out a different way. And that's what the girl who was working the stand was trying to prevent. So I just assumed he's not opening the door. He's not getting out to help me with my bag. He didn't pop the trunk. He's got somebody in there. And then he starts to drive away. And the girl comes over to me. He said, did he stop for you? I said, I got to be honest. I didn't know if somebody was already in the car. I didn't know what was going on. So she knocks on the window as he's starting to slowly pull away and says, hey, what? He can't see. You got to help. You got to tell him. And so he pops the trunk. I start to take my bag around and the girl comes over. I'll get it for you. No, I got it. And finally she grabs it from me and puts it in the trunk. And I get in the car and I tell them where we're going. And again, it's probably 20 to 4, quarter to 4. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to be starting this call in the car. Well, the hotel is very close to Union Station. I got to the hotel. There was no line to check in. I checked in. I was able to get up to the room with a few minutes to spare. Obviously, I didn't have a chance to get down to get to Starbucks, and I didn't have any water on me because my backpack was full, and I didn't have room for even a small bottle. I'll get to that in a minute. So I was able to eat my pretzel that I had brought that Liz had picked me up at the market that day. I think it's Philly Pretzel Factory. Soft pretzel was a braid or whatever. And I ate that, and then the call came, and I kind of ate, I think, during the call, muting myself off and on while I chewed, because I can't stand that when somebody eats during a call or a meeting. Now, again, I wasn't at 100%. So when I'm speaking, people are like, oh, you sound terrible. I thought, okay, I don't feel great, but thank you. At one point, Lisa was late jumping on the call. She is our new secretary. She was second VP, but she's our secretary now. She jumps on the call and she said, oh, I am on the right call. We're like, what do you mean? She said, I heard somebody speaking and I didn't know whose voice that was. It was mine, but it was deeper, and she thought she was on the wrong call. Now, we've had some issues with WhatsApp where we do our meetings in the past. So Harriet, the president, calls everybody in. We don't call in because there's been an occasion where a couple people called in, so they were on one call, and Harriet called a few people in, and they were on another call, and we couldn't get the calls to get together. So Harriet just calls everybody in, which makes it great. You don't have to remember anything. You just answer, which is what we do now. So we finished that call, and again, I didn't feel great. It was a good meeting. Once the call ended, I ran downstairs. I got Starbucks, and I asked what time they were open to, because I knew I would need something else. Because again, I didn't have any bottled water. I didn't have any water. And unlike New York, that has the champagne of municipal water, Washington, D.C. does not. So I didn't want to drink the tap water there. And I figured, okay, let me get another tea. I got an iced tea. I got a hot tea then, and I got an iced tea later. And I was tired because, again, I didn't feel good. So I laid down for a few minutes and started to get hungry. And I thought, you know what, let me figure out if there's any place close by besides the Mickey D's, besides a pizza guy, besides a sandwich shop that are just on the same block of the hotel, or there's a place in the hotel called the 21st Amendment. The food is pretty good there. Service is terrible. And I thought, you know what? I don't feel like going back out. It was chilly. Didn't feel great. Let me go down to the 21st Amendment. I go down there. I stand and I stand and I stand by the desk where they check people in and seat you. And I was just going to get a takeaway order. I was just going to order and bring it back up to the room. I didn't feel like sitting there. I just wanted to basically stay in. Nobody comes after 5 or 10 minutes. I said, you know what? I haven't even ordered. How long is it going to take once I actually place the order? So I went back up to the room and I thought, what else could I do? Do I just go to Mickey D's? I didn't really want Mickey D's. Do I get pizza? Nah, I wasn't too excited for that. And I knew that the sandwich shop was closed. So I thought, you know what? When I was in Orlando a few weeks earlier, Jane had said, you know, we can order some groceries. And I thought, well, if we can order groceries, maybe I'll get Uber Eats, because I've been ridiculed by a few of my friends that I've never ordered Uber Eats. Once I ordered, and it was for a hoagie, which I think is a nice thing to get because the driver can't get into it. It's all wrapped up and so forth. So I thought, I'm in Washington. Let's see if Oohh's and Aahh's, my favorite place to eat in Washington, is on Uber Eats where I can order. And I go through and they are, and I'm going to order. But again, I didn't feel great. And I thought a double mac and cheese. So I would get grilled shrimp or barbecued shrimp. I forget what they're called. You get 10 and they're always good. And then you get 2 sides. Usually when I go to the restaurant, I either get double mac and cheese or 1 mac and cheese and 1 fry. I thought I can't eat a double mac and cheese today. I just don't feel good enough to do that. Let me get some fries. no fries on that menu. And I thought, I can't get a double mac and cheese. And what if I eat it and then I don't feel good? I will never want to go there again. So I skipped it. I got put on my hoodie. I went back downstairs. I walked inside. There is a way to walk inside past, like I said, the different ballrooms and things like that, where you end up in the Mickey D's. It's a lot longer of a walk, but it's inside. You never have to go outside, which is cool. But again, I didn't want Mickey D's. I knew I was going to go outside at the Mickey D's and to the pizza guy. I go to the pizza guy, order 3 slices of pizza. He said, I'll give you a 4th one. He gives me the rundown of what he has. And he only had like 4 or 5 different choices. He said, during the week, we make a lot more. I said, okay, no biggie. Plain pizza is fine. Give me 3 slices, please. He said, I'll give you 1502, but I'll give you an extra one. I don't know if it had been sitting out a while. I didn't know if I looked terrible. Whatever the reason is, he gave me a 4th slice for free. So I felt obligated to eat it. I don't know if I really wanted it, but I was very full afterwards. And I was glad that I didn't get Oohs and Ahhs because, again, I did not feel great and couldn't really taste anything. I was congested, chest congested, head congested. And I was happy that I made that choice. It was only $15. And I went back down to Starbucks. I got an iced tea. So I had something to drink with it. And I was good to go. I had some M&Ms for dessert, and I was happy. I was, again, didn't feel great, but I was good. I just hung out. I went on my phone, probably made some calls to probably talk to Jane and Liz, separate calls. And that was it. And everything was good. I went to bed on the early side because I knew I had a long day. 9 o'clock the next morning, Monday morning, I had that legislative meeting. But again, I didn't feel great. And because I didn't feel great, I wore a mask on the train. I wore a mask to the meeting. Most of the times when I was in close quarters, I wore a mask. When we were in the ride shares, when we were going to dinner the next night, and I'll get into that in a minute, I had a mask on, not to protect me, but to protect everybody around me because I was coughing and everything else. So all was good. So I had that 9 o'clock meeting. I walked into the room. There was a set of tables, long tables set up in the front of the room. We walked in on what would have been their left side, on the side wall, the left side wall. And I walked all the way through to the middle aisle, then all the way through to the other aisle, all the way across from the door, figuring if I sit all the way over here, no one will sit near me. Again, I wasn't sure I wanted to wear the mask the whole time at the meeting, but if it was packed, I would have. And I did wear it for most of it, other than when I was blowing my nose. And it was great because I was around 7 feet from a trash can. So every time I used a tissue, I just had to stand up, take 1 step, put it in the trash and go back and sit down. Didn't need to get my cane out, make all that noise undoing it. And the meeting was awesome. There were a few guys there. One guy named Gary Wonder, who we had just had on White Canes Connect a couple days earlier, recorded it. It hasn't dropped yet. And I really wanted to meet him. And at the end of the meeting, I went up to try and find him, but he had moved and I didn't know where he had gone. And so I ended up not really talking to anybody but somebody from New Jersey, because Liz had on Saturday, the day before I left, had lunch with her college roommates, one of whom is a school teacher. And she was told about this one student who is blind, who doesn't get any kind of services and so forth and so on, and wanted to know if I could help. So I talked to somebody from New Jersey. I have her contact info now. I haven't contacted her since because I don't have all the other info about the kid. I talked to her and basically went to the front desk at this point because before I went down to the legislative meeting, again, I mentioned that ordering from Uber when I was in Orlando. Before I went down to these meetings, I went and ordered a couple of bottles of water, some blueberries, and a ginger shot. And I don't know if you ever had ginger shots. I absolutely love them. We've made them. Jane made them once back in the day, and I was the only one that liked it. And I drank some each day. Fresh ginger always makes me feel so good. But I'm sure Amazon has some sort of ginger shots. I will put a link to a couple of them in the show notes. So take a look there. The order that I placed was at Wegmans. So it turns out the shot that I got from Wegmans was name brand, Wegmans brand. we were at the store the other day and I wanted a ginger shot. So we went over. The store is called Giant and they only had some other brand. Of course, they're not going to have Wegmans. They had some other brand, wasn't the Giant brand, but I didn't like it as much. I liked it enough to drink the whole thing and feel good for a few hours. But I just love those things. So when I had walked over after the meeting, I had walked over to the desk, the front desk. Hey, I placed an order. I just wanted to check to see if it was in. I have some produce in it, and I just want to make sure it doesn't sit out for too long. No, we haven't gotten anything yet. Okay, fine. I went up to my room. I had a protein bar for lunch, and again, laid down because I wasn't feeling great. I got up after about laying down for about 15, 20 minutes, and I went back downstairs to the front desk because I had something going on at 1:00, which I'll get into in a minute. And at this time, the person had dropped the order off. So I did the ginger shot. I put the berries in the fridge, and I was ready to go down for my 1:00 appointment, which was an interview for basically asking me about Washington seminars, how long I've been going, any memorable moments, things like that. But the big part of it was for the NFB is putting together the Museum of the Blind People's Movement. And it's going to be all about basically what this podcast is, to show folks, hey, here's what blind people can do. Here's what blind people have done. And here's what they're capable of, so forth and so on. But they're expecting it to need about $20 million. So if you've got it, let me know and I'll pass it along to the NFB. So they were asking me museum questions. And as I've mentioned to you many times, I like going to museums and I talk about how I go through them and what I do to figure out what I'm looking at or standing in front of. And they were very appreciative of that. Now, there were two people in the room, one who was doing the video and who put the mic on me, and another girl whose name is Stephanie. The person who did the video stuff, her name is Nicole. Both of these folks are NFB employees and are cited. Stephanie is the director of communications or something like that for the NFB. So I had a couple of questions for her, and she actually had a question for me. We talked about a few things. I got done. I went back to my room, and again, I needed Starbucks. So I went and I grabbed Starbucks and then went into another training for the next day for when we meet with our representatives and senators, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and things like that. Now, I was shocked because I never have gone to this particular meeting. It starts at 2, it goes from 2 to 4, and they just go over the different bullet points of our agenda. And usually there's 3 or 4. This year there was 3, but right at the last minute, they made a change. And not only were there the 3, but they wanted us to speak first about the things that we've already accomplished and that are very helpful to us, the ADA, the IDEA, and things like that. And we touched on points, they wanted us to touch on points of that because we don't want to lose the things that we have won there. Because some of those things are very, very critical to a lot of blind folks. So they did this training, and I, again, was shocked at how packed the room was because I've always come down in that time frame. I've never gone to this meeting. I usually go to the meeting that starts at 5 called the Great Gathering Inn. And again, the Great Gathering Inn, I mean, what could I say about it? It was great, as Rodney Dangerfield said in Back to School about the Great Gatsby. President Riccobono, who's the president of the national organization, he gives a speech to get us all hyped up for things, talks about different things that, again, like I said, we're going to talk about in the meetings. Some other folks talk about different points that we should talk about in our meetings. Again, Representative Pete Sessions won an award, and his speech was awesome. The big thing, the main reason they added that chunk of what we've already won was because a lot of things, as you know, are getting cut. There was a day or 2 or 3 where funding to everything had been stopped. And we wanted to make sure that we don't lose those things. And Representative Sessions said, again, a Republican, when you go into an office, if somebody is balking at supporting our points and the different things we want to make into laws, these bills that are going to drop, just let them know that Pete Sessions is with us. And I thought, put that in the back of my head, because I knew the next day, a couple of the people that we were going to their office, I knew were Republican. And they're the one, especially Representative Glenn Thompson. He's from, I want to say, the 15th Congressional District. He covers 1/3 of the state of Pennsylvania. That's how big his district is. And he has been a big friend of the NFB also. He wasn't there. We didn't meet with him, but we met with his, again, not sure, legislative director, whatever it was. His name is Brian, and he talked about a lot of things. And again, they're on board with us. And in fact, Representative Thompson came and spoke the next night at an event, which I'll talk about in a minute. After the great gathering usually ends around 7 o'clock, everybody's excited and hungry. So that's the night we went to Oohhs and Aahhs. And there were a bunch of us. In fact, we took 2 different extra XL Ubers, 6 in each car. We left first. And as we're on the way there, Denise, who was sitting with us, gets a call from Pam, who was in the other group. Hey, we're here. Where are you guys? And this is the second year in a row where somebody has messed up a location, an office, or an address. Oohhs and Aahhs is located where you want to eat, 5933 Georgia, 5933 Georgia. There is another one over by Howard University. It's smaller. It doesn't have a bar, which is huge to most of the folks who were with me. And it's just not the one. I've never been there. It's one I'm sure the college kids go and do takeaway. We finally get there. We don't see them. We call them, you're not here. We're here. You're at the wrong one. They get back into the Uber and come back or call another Uber. I don't know. I'm guessing they called another one. I don't know. They come in. Now there's 12 of us. We get a call from Preston, who we thought had other plans. He said, where are you guys? We told him 5933 Georgia. He gets in an Uber and comes over. So there's 13 of us at the table. It was good. But again, this really reinforced my gratitude for not getting it the night before, because I didn't feel great. I couldn't taste everything. I tasted some, but it was wasted on me. And I kind of was mad that I couldn't, I only get down there once a year. It's during Washington seminar. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go tomorrow night, meaning Tuesday night. But I still didn't feel great on Tuesday. And it was fun to be with everybody, but it was a life-sucking event to divvy up the bill. They could only split it 4 ways. And originally I thought the server said 4 ways in equal amounts. But evidently he was able to split it in various amounts. And it just made for, I want to say we went back and forth for nearly an hour trying to figure who owed what and how we were going to pay. It was awful. But again, I didn't feel well. So that could have been part of it. And I kind of felt cheated that I got what I love and just thought it was okay because I couldn't really taste it well. Okay. Get back to the hotel. I am exhausted and get up the next day, Tuesday, knowing that our first meeting is, I think it was at 10. So we meet down in the lobby. We do all sorts of things. And we get into, I don't remember if it was an Uber, a Lyft, or a cab. The cool thing was there's a taxi stand right in front of the hotel. And everybody hates taxis and they want to order the Uber or Lyft. But and there's not a long wait because you're in a city. Jane always says she can order an Uber when she's upstairs, get in the elevator and come down and it's there. In the suburbs, here in Swarthmore, I can order an Uber and 15 minutes later it shows up. So it's not that bad. Ordering the ride share takes a few minutes, but who wants to stand outside when you can walk outside, say, hey, we need a cab for X number of people, and you get in and you go. It's not much more expensive. And when I say it's not much more expensive, Capitol Hill is so close and the House office buildings and the Senate office buildings are so close. The rides are cab or ride share are usually less than $10. on occasion, there was one day where there was all sorts of traffic that it took forever. And in fact, it was later that day, and I'll get into that in a minute. So we wander around the house side of the Capitol complex, going from one building to another, and you can go in the basement. You can go from one to the other without going outside. You can go from the House side to the Senate side. There is I don't want to call it a tram. It's it's got a track and it goes between the two, but you need to have somebody, if you're on the Senate side, you need to have somebody from the senator's office take you over there. Or if you're on the House side, you need to have somebody from the rep's office take you down there to get it to go over. So we finished up at like 3, and we didn't have to be back for this reception that was in the Kennedy Caucus Room, and I have a good story for that, until 5. Again, I didn't feel great. Kaylee didn't feel great. Michelle, who was our team lead, sounded like she was coughing up a lung. So we all went back to the hotel just to rest for a little bit. And when we got the cab, Michelle had to go over earlier because she's in this leadership program. So she had to go earlier to be there for 4:45. We figure if we show up at 5, we're good. When we get the cab, the 4 of us, Simon, Brian, Kaylee, and I get in the cab. There's something going on. Fire trucks. Michelle had texted me, you can't come in the Russell Senate building. You got to go into a different one. And finally, we ended up having to go into Hart because we couldn't even get close to the other one. So, and we were still 2 blocks. We got out of the cab 2 blocks. Now, we found out there were all sorts of protests. We saw fire trucks. So maybe there was a fire somewhere. It was just a whole bunch of things going on. And it took us a minute to get into the building. And once we got into the building, the security, the Capitol Police in there are always very helpful and told us how to go. And we went from the Hart building into the Russell. We go to the Kennedy Caucus Room. And the cool thing about the Kennedy Caucus Room, it's this big room where they have receptions and things like that. But back in the day, and maybe they still do, they've had different hearings in there. Now, the coolest one to me was on the wreck of the Titanic. In 1912, they had hearings in that very room for the Titanic. And I thought that was very cool. And I'd been in that room before. I just never knew that. And I just thought, wow, that is awesome. Tuesday, after we get done with this, and they always have food at this, but we were so late getting there because of all the traffic and having to walk a bit. I didn't get any food. Brian didn't get any food. Simon didn't get any food. I don't know if Kaylee did. I didn't see her again that night. Her boyfriend was in the New York delegation, and she immediately, once we got into the room, went to him. But we go to eat dinner afterwards. We figured, let's just go back to the hotel. We'll eat in the 21st Amendment. And actually, service and the food were both pretty good. Food is, like I said, is always pretty good. Service never is. But that night it was. But we're sitting at a small cafe table. And I have come through the day unscathed. Nothing on my suit. Now, I always bring another suit for the next day. Nothing on my suit. And we're at this small cafe table. I got a bacon cheeseburger with barbecue sauce on it. Brian got the same. Michelle got something else. And Preston, because he had so much to eat at the reception, which was free, he only had a couple of beers. I have the napkin on my lap. I start eating the cheeseburger. It's good. I'm enjoying it. But my entire body was not under the table because the table was so small. And I evidently didn't have the napkin completely spread out. At one point, I took a bite and I felt something on my knee. And I thought, oh, I hope that was it landing on my napkin. But it wasn't, because my napkin didn't cover from my knees to my lap. It just covered my lap into mid-thigh, I guess, or close to my knees. There is this big thing of barbecue sauce on the inside of my right knee. I'm like, there it is. Always happens. I always get something on whatever I've got on when I'm dressed nicely. And that always scares me when I go to buy something that's fairly nice, because I'm like, is this going to if I get something on this, how's it going to get cleaned out? I bought a nice jacket from Brooks Brothers a few months ago for the state convention in Erie. And I was terrified while I had it on because it was light colored and I'm carrying coffee and it's always a thing. And fortunately, I didn't get anything on that as far as I know. So we finish dinner. We all go back to our rooms. End of the day, fine. We don't hear anything on when we're going to meet down in the lobby. So we kind of set it up on our own. Hey, we've got to be there at 9. So let's meet in the lobby at 8. We're going to first meet with Senator McCormack, our new senator. He defeated Bob Casey in November. Bob Casey is a big friend of the blind community. Hopefully McCormack will be similar to him as far as I don't want to say our agenda, but what we need to help us continuing to, I don't want to say live the lives we want, which is the tagline from the NFB, but hopefully he is on board with us. Now, it wasn't a normal, typical meeting that we do at Washington Seminar with him. He has, since he took office in January, he's been having these events every Wednesday from 9 to 10 in the Kennedy Caucus Room where the Titanic hearings were. And they have some tasty cakes and they have coffee and water. And he comes in and other groups came in. It wasn't just our NFB folks. It was other groups. There was a guy, and this was horrible. I really wanted to talk to him. He's an egg farmer. And the day before he came down to Washington, he found out there was bird flu in his flock. 100,000 chickens had to be culled. And can you have insurance on that? I had so many questions when he said that. I thought, how does that guy continue on in business? Obviously, maybe he does more than eggs, but how does he continue on? So there's a bunch of groups in there, probably 60, 70 people total. And the cool thing was the senator comes in and he starts walking around and starts talking to people. So he came to our group and he's talking to Emily and Angelina. He gets to Pam. Now, this was the funniest part of the entire day. If you've ever seen the reboot of Ocean's 11, meaning the first reboot, not the Ocean's 8 with the girls, not Ocean's 11 Part 2 or Ocean's 12 or whatever that was called, the first one that had Bernie Mac in it, the best one. If you remember the scene where Bernie Mac was looking to purchase a van or two, and he's shaking the guy's hand, and it makes it uncomfortable for the guy because he's holding on to his hand, not letting go. Then he's asking, oh, your hands are so soft. Do you moisturize? When Senator McCormack came to Pam, who is the president of the Pennsylvania Association of Blind Merchants, Pam said, oh, I have something to give you. She has a flyer because we're having an event in Harrisburg on the 17th of May. She's holding on to his hand, reaching back behind her, bending down to get the flyer out of her bag, but not letting go of his hand. It was hysterical. She wasn't going to let go until she had that flyer in his hand. And they talked about it for a minute or two. And the senator says, oh, well, my mom lives right outside of Harrisburg, and name a city outside of Harrisburg, literally 15, 20 minutes away. She said, well, Pam said, bring her too. And so we'll see if he shows for that, but that would be cool. So May 17th, if you're not busy, Spring Fling, Best Western premiere in Harrisburg. We're going to have blind vendors there and so forth. I was next to Pam, so he came to me next, and I introduced myself, told him I'm from Swarthmore, and we're talking. And he's asking questions about, so do you do this often? And I said, well, we come down once a year. It's called Washington Seminar. Everybody from their particular state will go and try and meet with their reps and their senators. And I said, this is awesome that we get some time to talk to you about this because, we're fearful. We have usually 3 or 4 different bills we'd like to have introduced or co-sponsored. But this year, besides those, we want to make sure with everything going on, we don't lose what we already have. And I talked about the ADA and some points on that, why it's important for the blind community. And we talked a little bit longer and he moved on to whoever was next. I want to say Preston was next or Simon was next. And that was so awesome that we got a couple of minutes with him one-on-one. And then I actually got to speak to I got to speak to him again later because he then made some remarks and took some questions from people. That's how I know about the egg farmer. And he started off by saying, and it was before the Super Bowl, he said, I'm a big Steelers fan, but the Steelers are out, so go Birds. So everybody started laughing. He finishes that and they say, okay, well, if you'd like your picture with the senator, we're going to line up over here and so forth and so on. So I immediately made a beeline so we can get our group in there. We need a nice new picture for the NFBFPA website because the one we've had up there, it's been up for about 3 years, just needs a refresh. So it'll be nice to have that. We haven't gotten the professional one yet. I did get a copy of one that Emily's husband took, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm standing next to the senator, and like I said, we were talking some more, and I don't know if I was calling somebody to my right because our group was coming in from my right as we're facing the camera. And I don't know if there were people that didn't know where to go. So I'm kind of tilting my head. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see tilting my head and leaning. And again, the senator was right next to me. And I'm like, come on down, keep coming, follow my voice. And that's how we direct folks. You don't say, I'm right over here. You just say, follow my voice, because that's how somebody could hear where they need to go. The other folks come in and the senator says, whoa, this is a good looking group. Now, I wanted to say, oh, it sounds like you might be blind also, but I didn't know if that would offend anybody else in my group. So I said, oh, you really are in politics, aren't you? And he started to laugh, and we took 18 million pictures. And again, I didn't know how many we were going to take. So there were times where I'm sure I wasn't looking directly at the camera. Hopefully the one that they send us, I am looking at the camera, because the one that Matt took, I was not. And if I can find that one, I will put it somewhere. I will put it over one of my shoulders and you can see what I mean. But all in all, it was, that was pretty much the end. We went and met with somebody from Senator Fetterman's office next, after spending about an hour in a coffee shop that's in the basement of the Russell and talking and having a hot tea. And some folks, I think some people even got some yogurt or something else. But then we went up, met with Anna from Senator Fetterman's office, and we were done. And when we go outside to get the ride share, it sounded like there was a football game going on, because every so often there were these loud cheers. And I don't mean like, a handful of people. I mean like a stadium full of people. Now, I don't know what was near us other than maybe the mall, Capitol Mall, whether it was the Lincoln Memorial. Again, I don't know where in retrospect too, we were right outside the Russell office building, what was close enough and what was going on. But it was a cheer like somebody scored. And 5 minutes later, it was like a cheer that somebody scored again. Got in the ride share, went back to the hotel. I had enough time because we got done early enough and I had a late checkout. I had enough time to go upstairs and change before checking out. So I was able to wear my warmer hoodie than just my jacket from my suit. So I was very happy about that. Simon, Brian, and I, and Preston went and got lunch from the sandwich place. And Simon and I were going to take a train later on. Brian's train was before ours, and Preston was getting a ride from a Lions Club member. So it's just a great time. And again, it's not far from us. 2 hours on the train. And this, I did not take a cell. I spent $10 on the train going home. So all was good. And it's just a great, even as crappy as I felt. Now, what I found out later, Michelle did not go with us to the senators because she just felt horrible. And she was flying back to Erie that day. The next day I found out she had bronchitis. A day or two after that, I found out another one in our group had COVID. I never tested for COVID. I never went to the doctor. Did I have one of those things? Maybe. But as you can hear, I sound a lot better than I did the last episode. And if I had something, it's gone or almost gone. And I certainly wasn't contagious even for the Super Bowl and whatnot. But it's just a great thing to do. The folks in Congress are happy to hear from us because now they know what's important to us and they remember that when it comes time for co-sponsors and things like that. So one thing that until I started going to Washington seminar, I never realized. So every 2 years, there's a new Congress. We're in the 119th now. The last one, of course, was the 118th. All of our agenda points, I believe they were all introduced as bills in either both the House and Senate or just the House. But when the Congress turns over, you got to start all over. So all of them have to be reintroduced. Now, one of our bills was introduced in the House the other day, Blind Americans Return to Work Act. I'm not going to I'll spare you all the details. I'll put a link to the Washington seminar page over on nfbofpa.org so you can see what they're about. I mean, some of them just seem like they're common sense. And I'm not sure why they have to do a law to tell you, hey, it's common sense. But it's just it makes me feel good again, as crappy as I felt being down there. And it's very exciting, again, getting to speak to the senator. Sometimes we speak to reps, past reps all the time in the hallway. It's just very cool to do that and talk with their staff and everything else. It's just a nice time. It's educational, and it's just something that I really look forward to every year. And again, of course, Oohs and Aahs is something I always look forward to. But again, I feel cheated because I didn't feel great and it wasn't up to my liking like it usually is. So one other thing I want to talk about before I go is episode 124 of White Canes Connect. We had Glenda Such and Patty Cox on. They are from a group for Council of Citizens with Low Vision International. That's Patty's group. That's the larger group, of which Glenda's group is called Low Vision Now. They're one of the 10 chapters of the CCLVI, which is just a mouthful. But we had them on, and they talked all about low vision. February is Low Vision Awareness Month, and we like to have an episode like that for Low Vision Awareness Month. Just a lot of good information there. Again, episode 124. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check that out if you want. We've got a lot of great episodes coming up. We have a White Canes Connect episode coming up talking about Washington seminar with somebody from NFB National. So just a lot of good things coming up there. And I'm hoping, I know I just released an episode last week, I'm hoping I can get back on track to releasing an episode weekly for iCantCU. We'll see how it goes with my NFB obligations. I do appreciate you joining me for this episode. Thank you so much. Please check out the show notes over at iCantCU.com/281. That's iCantCU.com/281, numerically speaking. And remember, iCantCU sounds like a whole sentence, but it's only 7 characters long. capital C-A-N-T, capital C, capital U.com/281. Please give me a call if you've got questions about Washington Seminar or anything else that I've got going on, other show ideas, whatever it might be. Please reach out. 646-926-6350. You've got up to 3 minutes. Please leave your name and town if you do leave a voicemail. You can also email me, iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com, iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com. There's always the socials, @DavidBenge, as I mentioned at the beginning, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, X, pardon me, as far as Twitter goes, X, LinkedIn, and I think that's it. I think I got them all. Again, @DavidBenge. I'd love to hear from you. Let's connect over there. Threads. Did I mention Threads? Did I mention Blue Sky? There's just every place. David Benge, @DavidBenge. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Be well, stay safe, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.